is Alex Mercer. I'm the reason for all of this. They call me a killer, a monster, a terrorist. I'm all of these things.
In the late 2000s, a small title by the name of Prototype was released by Radical Entertainment. Despite boasting an ambitious and unique premise, the game never received the level of attention and acclaim it deserved, often overlooked in favor of more established open-world games like Assassin's Creed or Infamous. Prototype 1 carved out a distinctive place in gaming history, one of chaotic freedom, insane powers, and a darker narrative than most people were used to at the time. Looking back at it today, it's clear that Prototype 1 was an incredibly fun and daring game that offered a power fantasy unlike any other, even if it wasn't perfect. Let's take a deeper dive into why Prototype 1 stands as an underrated classic that deserves more recognition. When it comes to Prototype, the word power fantasy isn't just an afterthought, it's the game's core. Alex Mercer, the protagonist, starts the game with amnesia, thrusting him into a world that is slowly unraveling around him. But unlike most other heroes suffering from memory loss, Alex is no ordinary man. He is an absolute powerhouse. Upon awakening in the midst of a raging virus outbreak, Alex discovers he possesses the ability to shapeshift, absorb the identities and memories of others, and wield a variety of terrifying powers. What made Prototype so thrilling was the sheer scale of the player's power. Alex could morph his limbs into devastating weapons like claws, blades, tendrils, and hammers, or even summon monstrous claws and a shield made of living biomass to protect him. He could leap across skyscrapers, consume enemies to assume their appearance, and crush entire military forces without breaking a sweat. The game didn't just give players a taste of godlike abilities, it let them live it. What made it even more enjoyable was the variety and creativity with which you could approach combat. You weren't restricted to any one set of moves, you could experiment switching between abilities on the fly. Do you want to slice and dice your enemies with tendrils, or perhaps you want to transform into a giant armored beast and go on a rampage, destroying everything in your path? The variety of ways you could wreak havoc made Prototype an exhilarating experience. The combat never got stale, and the sheer visceral fun of tearing through enemies with overwhelming power was addicting. A lot of open-world games are often praised for their expansive, immersive environments. But in this game, New York City is more than just a backdrop. It's a dynamic, interactive playground. The city is filled with towering skyscrapers, narrow alleys, busy streets, and hazardous zones teeming with infected monsters and military forces. Unlike many other open-world games that feel static, Prototype World feels alive. New York City is crumbling under the weight of a virus outbreak, and as you roam through its decimated streets, you can't help but feel like you're living through a chaotic event of monumental proportions. One of the most exciting aspects of the game was the feeling of freedom that came with exploring this vast urban landscape. You could run on foot, climb walls, glide across buildings, or leap hundreds of meters in a single bound. The game was designed to make you feel like you were in control of a force of nature, and it succeeded brilliantly. The city, despite its somewhat dated graphics, was filled with opportunities to wreak havoc, chase down enemies, or simply explore the intricate world Radical Entertainment created. No matter how many times you played, the game managed to retain its excitement thanks to the endless possibilities for destruction and chaos. Alex's powers weren't just for combat, they also allowed you to explore the world in a way that few other games at the time allowed. Want to scale the tallest building? No problem. You can leap, climb, or glide to almost any spot, making the process of discovery a unique and enjoyable experience. Whether you were evading military helicopters or chasing down your next objective, the environment was a fun tool for both exploration and combat. The storyline in Prototype was deceptively simple at first, but it managed to weave a tale full of intrigue, betrayal, and mystery. Alex Mercer begins the game with no memories of who he is, only to uncover that he's somehow at the center of a catastrophic viral outbreak that's sweeping across New York City. As the story unfolds, you learn more about Alex's role in the virus's creation, the conspiracy behind the outbreak, and the military's role in trying to control it. The twist is that Alex himself is a product of this disaster, making his quest for answers all the more urgent and personal. What made Story unique was its darker, grittier tone. Unlike the more heroic figures in many action games, Alex was a reluctant anti-hero. He was a man on a mission, one driven by rage, confusion, and a desire for vengeance. The narrative was tied to his internal struggle with his identity, with the discovery of his powers, and the haunting realization that he was part of the chaos that was engulfing the city. As the player, you felt every revelation Alex uncovered, whether it was through consuming enemies and absorbing their memories or piecing together the puzzle of the virus's origin. The narrative was delivered through action, dialogue, and environmental storytelling, keeping you engaged as the mystery unraveled piece by piece. The combat in Prototype was nothing short of brutal. With Alex's shape-shifting abilities, you could engage enemies in a variety of ways. The weapon options were numerous, and they felt powerful. Whether you were slashing with razor-sharp claws, smashing foes with tendrils, or using Alex's devastating slam attacks, the combat felt fast, fluid, and unrelenting. The combo system was easy to understand but difficult to master, giving players the freedom to get creative with their attacks. The game also had a satisfying rhythm to its combat. The more you fought, the more you unlocked new abilities, which further enhanced your fighting style. From the ability to launch enemy vehicles at foes, to being able to transform into monstrous creatures to wreak havoc on the battlefield, each new ability added layers of excitement and strategy. The combat was never boring, and there was always something new to look forward to. The highlight of the combat system, however, was its fluidity. Fighting in Prototype wasn't just about using the right abilities, it was about how well you flowed from one attack to another. The game's combat system felt effortless, and every encounter was exhilarating. Whether you were fending off military soldiers, battling infected beasts, or taking on large bosses, the visceral nature of the gameplay kept you engaged at all times, and like all games, Prototype wasn't without its flaws. The most glaring of these was the repetitive nature of some of the side missions. While the core gameplay was undeniably fun, some of the side objectives, like collecting certain items or surviving waves of enemies, could feel like filler. These missions didn't contribute much to the story or character development, making them feel somewhat unnecessary at times. The game's graphics, while not terrible, were a bit dated compared to some of its contemporaries. While the open-world setting was expansive and rich, the character models and environments felt stiff, especially in comparison to games that were pushing more advanced visuals at the time. Additionally, the game's AI could occasionally be a bit predictable. Military forces often followed the same patterns, and the infected enemies didn't always provide a challenge. There were moments when the combat felt a bit too easy, and even some of the later stages failed to provide much of a challenge due to the power Alex had unlocked. Despite these flaws, Prototype was a game that got a lot of things right. Its biggest strength lay in its ability to deliver a fun and unique experience. There was something immensely satisfying about running through the streets of New York City, leaping across rooftops, and tearing through the military or infected hordes like a true unstoppable force. The game's freeform nature allowed for creative expression in combat and exploration, and there were few titles that offered such a visceral power fantasy. The story, while not deep, was engaging enough to keep players invested. Alex Mercer's journey of self-discovery and vengeance was dark and intriguing, and the way the story tied into the gameplay, allowing you to consume enemies and unlock their memories, was a unique narrative device. But what truly set Prototype apart was its unapologetic embrace of chaos. The game didn't care if you wanted to follow the story or just rampage through the city. Both options were available, and both were just as fun. In a world where many open-world games often feel bogged down by mechanics and overly structured narratives, Prototype offered a refreshing take on what it meant to be free in a digital world. It may not have been perfect, but its combination of thrilling combat, a chaotic open world, and a protagonist with godlike powers created an experience that was genuinely fun to play. While it didn't gain the recognition it deserved in its time, Prototype will always be remembered by those who experienced its intense action and unrelenting thrill as an underrated gem in the open world genre. Alright, that's it for today's video. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. Also, feel free to leave a comment down below with your thoughts or any questions you have. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care.